Talktainmentradio.com.
We give you a reason to come.
The world's greatest radio.
We give you a reason to stay.
Radio the way it should be heard.
You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and not necessarily those of Talktainmentradio.com, 3MR Production, its ownership, management, or staff.
We've got the power.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on Talktainmentradio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalktainmentRadio.com. I'm Brother Kahari. As always, I'm here with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and this is The Compensatory Concept, heard every Wednesday, 10 a.m. live, and then you can podcast 24/7. You can pick up on all the shows that you've missed or that you want to hear. All right, so joining me in this hour at this time, of course, is Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Fuller, how are you, sir?
I'm still learning.
All right, Mr. Fuller, tell everybody the names of your books and where they can get them.
The names of the books are both of them have a basic title, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, and what those words mean are described in the book. Otherwise, it wouldn't mean anything to a person just at a glance. Those words, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. But there's a subtitle, Textbook Workbook for Thought, Speech, and or Action for Victims of Racism. And racism is described singularly as white supremacy. The book, the basic book, and the additional word guide to the basic book can be obtained by punching into your computer the word tiny, TINY, dot, CC// Fuller in capital letters. I repeat, the word tiny, TINY, dot, CC// Fuller in capital letters. And what should come up is a form for ordering.
Okay. And once that happens, what does that mean?
Well, you could order the book through the mail and by a check or money order, and it will give you a description. Also, there's a brief description of what the books are about.
Mm-hmm.
And the basic book and the additional word guide to the basic book is about the system of white supremacy being the dominant force, the dominant motivating force among the people of the known universe, all of the people who are on the planet now. The thing that motivates them from the time they get up in the morning to the time they go to bed at night, or vice versa, is the system of racism in the form of white supremacy. Everybody is a part of that system, one way or another, because that's the dominant political and religious system on the face of the planet as we speak right now. According to whom, according to what, according to logic, and according to evidence. Not according to Neely Fuller, but anybody that looks around and travels around and goes everywhere, every inch of this planet, they will find that the dominant political and the dominant religious force among the people of this planet is racism in the form of what we call white supremacy and or the system of white supremacy. And what that means is the white people who have chosen to be racist, that's not all white people, but those who have chosen to be racist, those who have chosen to belong to a race called the white race, and in that white race, with the mission of dominating and mistreating the people who are classified as white all over the planet, that's their mission, have succeeded in doing so, and are now the most powerful political and religious force among the people of the known universe as we speak right now. That's the premises that the books are based on. Now, that premise could be false, but I don't think so. And if it is false, then I am sending a false message, that there is some dominant force other than that, among the people, that is. I'm not talking about divinity force. I'm talking about the forces that people have invented in the form of racism.
Now, when you say dominant force, what does that mean?
That means in all areas of activity, people are engaged in one or more, either directly or indirectly, of some type of activity in everything that they do when they're on the planet. And these, you can put them under different labels, but they all interact with each other. And I have put in the book, that's economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And everybody on the planet, in 1 minute to the next, is engaged in one or more of these areas of activity at all times. If they're doing something in the area of religion, they're not doing something in the area of religion, which they always are, because religion just means a strong belief backed up by action. Then they're doing something in the area of sex, or they're doing something in the area of labor. People are always laboring. You're trying to work. You're trying to do some kind of work. That's what labor is, some type of work. And that affects what you do in economics, which means the use of your time and energy. And the use of time and energy is also labor. It's also sexual. It's also religious. So all of these areas of activity are interactive. They're just labels that describe what people do all day long and all night long while they're on the planet, because you have to be doing something if you're here. And these labels will fit whatever you're doing. So the white supremacists have decided they're going to dominate everything that non-white people do on this planet in all of these areas of activity. And that decision was made long before I was born. And that decision and that mission was completed at a time before I was born. So that's the system that's in place now. There is no other system. All other systems, you might call them, if you want to label those systems, subsystems, which means they come under the system of white supremacy. They're certainly not as powerful.
Okay. So what's the best way to deal with this dominant force? Is there
You have to codify it. Go ahead.
Okay, codify behavior means you have to change the way in which you react to this force in order to counter that force. Is that correct?
Yes.
That means the way that the business what you're saying is that the victims of white supremacy have a business also, and their business is to carry out certain kinds of behavior. The problem is that business is not working, but they continue to do bad business in reference to trying to counter a condition under which they live. Is that what you're saying?
I'm definitely saying that. In fact, the business of counter-racism is non-existent. It's really so sloppy as you can't even call it a business. In the word guide, I call it small business. White supremacy is big business. It's the biggest business on earth, the biggest business as anybody has ever thought of since people have been on the planet. Nothing has been bigger than that. The system of white supremacy, mistreating people on the basis of color. That's been the biggest business on the planet, and is, as of this moment, as I speak, unless I'm not telling the truth, that there is a bigger business. But I'm saying that that's the biggest business. And the people who are opposed to racism, opposed to white supremacy, opposed to mistreatment of people based on color, are very small business. This business is so small as to be practically non-existent, because most people haven't even recognized the big business as even existent. They think that it's some type of little small operation that every now and then interferes with things, on a piecemeal basis. Whereas that is the only show in town. There is no other show other than the system of white supremacy. That's the premise.
That's deep. So where do we go from here then? What is the first step we need to take to put this codified system together? How do we do it?
Individualize it, because everything always starts with individual actions, individual people every day, what they do every day, what they think about doing, what their plans are. Each individual could wake up every morning and think about what is the biggest problem on the planet, and should I be addressing that big problem? Because if you can't address the big problem, the biggest problem that affects what you do, all the other problems that you're trying to solve are not going to get solved. Mm-hmm. That's just the mathematics of that. If you are trying to fix the plumbing in a house and the house is falling down, first thing you have to look at is what's causing the house to fall down. The house is sitting on an earthquake fault line, and the house is shaking and falling apart, and you're trying to fix the plumbing? That's not logical. What you have to do is figure out what's causing the house to shake. What's causing the house to fall to pieces in the first place? Just keep trying to repair the plumbing and think that you can go in the basement and to paint the walls and do this and that and the other. You're just working against yourself. You're wearing yourself out doing a whole lot of nothing fast. And so each individual has to make up his or her mind that they're going to work on replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice each and every day wherever he or she is. And, of course, justice would mean, so that you can measure that, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. That's the first order of business. It's just two parts. Guaranteeing that no person, white or non-white, is mistreated. Got to guarantee that. Number two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, an illustration of how that would work basically is when you hear sirens. That's what you hear. On a piecemeal basis, people do that without realizing it. They support that. When you hear sirens in the night or during the day, you hear an ambulance going somewhere to pick up someone. That ambulance is a priority. You see traffic moving right and left and moving out of the way and getting out of the lanes and whatnot. These are the laws in most places throughout the world. And that ambulance goes where? To the person that needs help the most. Now, everybody out there needs help. The person who is in traffic is trying to get to the job and all like that. They're trying, to make the next light so that they can get to the job on time. That's the problem. They're trying to solve that problem. That person needs help. The lighting system helps them to get there, but that person has to pull over and allow the ambulance to go through so that the ambulance can get help to the person that needs help the most. So in little piecemeal ways, we already understand that principle. The principle is not new, but it's got to be universal. If it's 10 people in a room and you walk into the room, your first order of business is you ask, is anybody in this room being mistreated? Okay. When you get that all cleared up, find out who's mistreating whom, and straighten that out, then you say, now, who needs any help, other than trying to get rid of the mistreatment? The second order of business, in order to produce a product called justice. Who needs help? So all people will hold up their hands, including the person asking the question, because everybody needs help of some kind. From the time that you appear on this planet, you need help. And when you get ready to leave here, you will need help. I don't care who you are. Okay, so you start with the person, since everybody has their hand up, everybody needing help. You say, well, okay, everybody in here needs help, all 10 people, but let's start with the person that needs help the most. So you just make a list. of all of the different types of help that each person needs. And then you look at your list and you'll say, well, now, person number 6, Mary Jones, seems like she needs more help than anybody. So you start with Mary Jones. This is not a wild-eyed principle. It's not an undermining principle. It's not a non-feasible or an illogical principle. It would make the type of world that we should be aiming to have, rather than a world based on mistreating people based on color, which is what we have. And which is why we have all of these so-called wars all over the place, people starving, people being dislocated, people being confused, and all of this activity based on what? Someone came up with an idea that in order to boost their egos, that they could set up a system based on mistreating people based on color, and then strutting around feeling good about it all day long, that I am mistreating people because of their color, and I'm proud of it, and I'm trying to think of newer and better ways to continue to do so. Well, it's up to each individual person, particularly the people who are victims of it, the non-white people of this planet, to say enough already, as they would say in Brooklyn. Enough already. Let's get rid of this system and come up with a better system, a sane system, a system of justice, rather than do all of the world's business based on a thing called racism, an artificial construct called racism in the form of white supremacy, and everybody falling in line behind it and think that they're doing something great. It's a waste of the Creator's time and energy, and ours too.
Interesting. So you're saying that should there be a system set up? And if so, how does this system get set up? I mean, do we need more organizations to set this counter-racist system up? How do we go about doing it?
The organizations that already exist can start talking about individual codification. Otherwise, you start looking for a leader, which plays into the hands of the white supremacists, because the white supremacists can take care of any leader that you come up with in about 2 seconds, and they know that. This is why if you don't have a leader, they will appoint you one. They will say, okay, now you listen to this person, but I'm going to control this person that you're listening to, even if the person doesn't think that they're being controlled, because they are in a world dominated by the white supremacists. So your leader comes under me. I can swat your leader to death in about 2 seconds. So you will be going around there trying to protect your leader and hope that your leader lives a long time and hopes your leader is going to solve this problem. And then you should ask, first of all, if I'm following the leader, what is the leader following? The leader is following logic. And the logic is what? Codification. So if everybody has the same code, everybody is the leader. Now, it's okay to listen to a person who has the title of leader, but the only leader, really, of the non-white people of this planet right now in the system of white supremacy, logically speaking and by evidence, all of the leaders of black people, the non-white people of this planet, are white supremacists. They are the leaders. But what they will do as a part of their program is point out, oh, you have some leaders among yourselves, and that's one of your leaders. And this one over here is one of your leaders. And that one over there is one of your leaders.
Mr. Fuller, we have S. Dot who has joined us. S. Dot, how are you?
I'm very well, sir.
Okay, you have some thoughts or questions for Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Fuller, I have a question. I didn't know if you were familiar with the book by Dr. Marimba Aini. She has a book called Urugu, which is an African-centered critique of European
I don't know if,
behavior.
Mr. Fuller, are you familiar with it? I've certainly read the book several times, so I am familiar with it, but I don't know about Mr. Fuller. Are you familiar with the work?
I never even heard of the book.
Okay.
Okay. Well, in the book, she talks about universalism, and she specifically talks about how, from a Eurocentric perspective, they define, because they are the ones that are in control and in power and dominating everyone on the planet, they define the parameters of what is considered the universe. So, looking at that perspective, how is it that we as non-white people can attain the level of becoming universal man and universal woman when Europeans are the ones who define what the universe is? And by your definition, can you explain what universal man, universal woman, and universal child would be?
Oh, in answer to the second question, I don't know. That's something to be found out. That's like the X in algebra. You have to find out the value of it. We don't know what a universal man and a universal woman would be like. But
I tell you what, Mr. Fuller, both you and S. Dot stay right there. We've got more to come on the compensatory concept. I'm Brother Kahari with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
Dispatch.com is your hometown homepage providing breaking news and updates around the clock. The Dispatch.com network of sites can also help your business in these tough times with the tightest targeting in Central Ohio. The Dispatch.com network has ranked #1 among all local media sites for more than 2 years straight. And together with Yahoo, we're the only network that can deliver your message to 90% of the local online audience. Dispatch.com, customized solutions to reach potential customers. To learn more, call or visit dispatch.com/hometown.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
Do you like sweet tea or do you love sweet tea? Hi, I'm Jackie, founder of JC's Sweet Iced Tea. Well, I've got the tea for you. JC's Sweet Iced Tea is an all-natural, authentic, Southern-style sweet iced tea. It's an old family recipe out of South Carolina. I'm a Southerner and I know sweet tea. Go to jcssweeticedtea.com. It is distributed throughout the state of Ohio and Kentucky. Locally, it is at Cafania's, Celebrate Local at Easton, and also we're in Whole Foods. It is affordable. Yes, you may use your credit card to purchase or you may use PayPal to purchase bottles of JC's Sweet Iced Tea. The case consists of 12 16-ounce bottles. Our website is jcssweeticedtea.com. And our email address, jcssweeticedtea@gmail.com. Phone number is 614-203-0690. JC's Sweet Iced Tea.
Earn a degree in business administration from Globe University and enter into a career with high job placement and be more employable in a competitive job market. Build a career in the private sector. Become a consultant. Work in a government agency. Go the nonprofit route. Or use your entrepreneurial skills to open your own business. Your success starts here with a degree in business administration from Globe University. Inquire online at globeuniversity.edu.
I'm feeling Subway. I'm feeling Subway today. You feeling a taste of summer? Come to Subway restaurants for the barbecue pulled pork sandwich. It's juicy, it's tender, it's sweet and savory, and it's made fresh, just the way you like it. And fire up your taste buds. It's barbecue time at Subway restaurants. Feeling the sunny day. I'm feeling Subway. Subway. Eat fresh. For a limited time at participating restaurants.
Go ahead. Make my day.
We've got the power.
Justice is better than racism.
This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard, the world's greatest radio. I'm Brother Kahari. As always, Mr. Neely Fuller is live on Wednesdays at 10 a.m., and that's Eastern Standard Time. Also, you can catch him in podcasts. That means go to talktainmentradio.com and just hit the program that you want. That would be the compensatory concept, and voila, you can listen. Joining me is Mr. Neely Fuller, and on the line with Mr. Neely Fuller, of course, is Mr. S. Dot. And S. Dot had a couple of, I think he posed a question to Mr. Fuller, and I wanted to give Mr. Fuller time to answer, and Mr. S. Dot a chance to interact with that. Mr. Fuller, go ahead.
Yes, sir. In page 322 of the textbook for victims of racism, the book that I have been talking about, I have a compensatory definition. See, because in the system of white supremacy, you have to make up definitions for a lot of the words that have been thrown out here that don't have definitions that make sense. That's why I call them compensatory. So you try to make sense out of whatever you're trying to say. So when I'm talking about universal man and our universal woman, and that's a hypothetical about what the description of that is, I have on page 322 of the basic book. It's any male and or any female person who knows and understands truth and who has used that knowledge, and that's past tense, has used that knowledge and understanding in a manner that has produced, here again, that's past tense, has produced justice and correctness in all places, in all areas of activity, including economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Now, if you have produced justice, you've already produced justice and already produced correctness, meaning being in balance with the things around you, the air, the water, the rocks, the trees. You're in balance with all of these things, and you're in balance with all the people. The people are not out of balance with each other like they are now. Then hypothetically, you would have universal man and universal woman. You don't have that now. Nobody is qualified for that now. That's why you have the chaos that you have in the world right now. Everybody is chaotic. No person walking the face of this planet is the type of person or the quality of person that a person should be. Why? Because people are completely out of balance with each other and out of balance with everything else. And that's obvious. That's why people can hardly even speak to each other on an elevator. I mean, without some kind of tension. That tension shouldn't exist at all. It should not exist, not even to a fraction. It shouldn't be any. But this is what you have. So the synonym for a universal man or universal woman, you can probably hypothetically come up with all types of words which would have to call for other words to describe it. And I have here on page 322 some of the synonyms for universal man and universal woman would be all man and are all woman. But that would call for definitions. Or correct man, or correct woman, good man, good woman. Can we really say that we are good people here on this planet? I don't think so. I don't think anybody's qualified to really say, I'm really a good person.
Well, what is good, Mr. Fuller? Give me a standard for what good is.
The good should be, now this is compensatory, you're perfect. In other words, you're mistake-proof. Now, try that on for size, because we should always be reaching for something other than what we are.
Then if we're not good, what are we?
We
Mr.
are
Fuller?
incorrect because we're out of balance. This is what we can measure by. We can measure that. People are in conflict with each other. So how can you prove the existence of good people when people are in conflict with each other? A perfectly good person would have so much power if that person really was good that you wouldn't have conflict among people on this planet. That's the hypothesis, because that person, just what that person would radiate, would permeate everything and everybody. So you don't have any good people here. That doesn't exist.
So
People walk around and call themselves good based on some standards that they set. And some of them might have 5 or 6 elements that they say, hey, that makes me good. I got these 5 things going. That makes me a good person. Then the next person says, oh, you got to have at least 10. Then another person says, oh, no, you got to have at least 53. Now, I know, I've counted them. You got to have 53 attributes to be a good person. And I'm 52, and I'm working on that last one. Now, anybody can say that. And most, I won't say most people, but a lot of people, if you just in general conversation, just ask the question, are you a good person? Are you truly a good person? Do you know what a good person is? Do you know how many elements go into making a person, quote, unquote, good? The exact elements, every last one of the elements, not some, not most, every last one of the elements that it takes to make a person good. Has anybody ever really examined that and bombarded that like you would going into a laboratory and trying to find out how many atoms, atoms, is in an orange that's the size of an orange?
Mm-hmm. Mr. Fuller, S. Dot had a question. I think he wanted to interact with you on something. Go ahead, S. Dot.
Yes, sir. Okay, so Mr. Fuller, I comprehend and grasp what you were saying in terms of universal man and universal woman. My concern or my question is that under the current system in which we currently find ourselves as non-white people, we find that our social parameters on a day-to-day basis are greatly influenced and overwhelmingly dominated by from a European perspective or paradigm of what they call life. Therefore, whenever we try to say something is good or something is justice, or what we perceive to be as justice, how can we attain justice when justice is being defined from a European perspective? I mean, what is actually justice when so much of what we experience on a day-to-day basis is defined from a European perspective?
Well,
That's
by
a bit of
European,
a I have.
Yeah, by European, I'm saying I don't use the term European. I say the white supremacists.
Okay.
Because I don't know what the word European really means. And I have in my word guide that when people use the term European, what does that really mean? What is a European? I mean, what qualifies a person to be a European? And, and what does that mean? And what does a European do? But, see, so I have problems with the use of the term European. When people, sometimes I've looked in dictionaries and whatnot and geographies, and sometimes I hear people who are described as European as being Euro-Asian because they say that they are on the Euro-Asian continent. And what does that mean? So it's compounded confusion. But white supremacy is very clear. White supremacy is racism, and racism is white supremacy. And racism in the form of white supremacy means mistreating people based on color. Now, that's clear. That's bell clear. There's no confusion there. So I choose to use that term. Now, in answer to the other part of the question, justice. There is no legal definition for the word justice. That's why I had to make up a compensatory term, definition for the term justice. I didn't invent the word justice, but I did invent a compensatory definition for it that I think will hold up under all kinds of pressure, at least so far it has, unless somebody comes up with a better definition. And that is, justice is defined in my textbook, the word guide, as 2 parts, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. That's part 1. Part 2, guaranteeing that the person needs help the most gets the most constructive help.
Now, who guarantees this, Mr. Fuller?
The people.
What
themselves.
Whoa. You said
Yes.
guaranteeing. Now, in order to guarantee, somebody has to guarantee. Now, you're not talking about the people who are implementing the injustice. How are they going to guarantee justice when their whole purpose, according to what you've said, is to implement injustice. So how are they going to, and the people you say have no power, so how can they guarantee justice? Explain that.
You guarantee justice by, first of all, giving it that definition and then working to make that definition come true.
How? When you have no power.
You get power by starting with a definition of what you're trying to do. We don't even have a definition of what we're trying to do. We've been talking about justice like forever, but we never had a definition for it.
Oh,
so
there's
we
a
wouldn't
definition.
even know what we're...
Dr. King knew what he was talking about when he said justice. He said it over and over again. I've read his definition in many of his works. So we have a definition. Dr. King was a wordsmith, and others. Malcolm X used the word justice quite a bit. He knew what he was. You're saying these guys didn't know what they were talking about?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if we use the compensatory definition that I came up with, now I don't know what the definition. I've heard everybody use the word. I mean, when I say everybody, I mean everybody who has ever used the word justice probably has his or her own definition. I'm saying I never heard a definition that was very clear to me until I made up one, because that's why I was searching. I was searching for someone to give me a definition that was clear. I couldn't find anyone who had given me a definition. The word was already out here. And then in 1994, on a television program, it was a lawyer on the Larry King show, I believe it was, Jerry Spence. And Larry King and Jerry Spence were talking about the word justice. Mm-hmm. And Jerry Spence, who was a lawyer, if I recall correctly,
said
that there is no legal definition for the word justice. Now, I never knew that before 1994. I assumed that there was a legal definition for the word justice. So later on, I asked the lawyer myself. I said, exactly what is justice? I mean, something that I can really, get a grip on so that I know what I got when I got it. And he says, well, in this area of the world, justice is whatever the Supreme Court says it is. And I said, that's a definition? And he said, yeah. He said, otherwise it's everywhere, it's nowhere, it might be this, it might be that. I say, oh, no wonder. We don't even know what we're doing. We can't measure what we're talking about. So I am attempting to measure what we're talking about. And I gave the illustration right here in this program of the 10 people in the room.
I heard Malcolm X, and I heard Dr. Martin King, Luther King, and others, Elijah Muhammad and others say justice is the elimination of white supremacy. I heard them say that on many occasions. Justice is the elimination of racism. I heard them say that. Wouldn't that hold as an effective definition, Mr. Fuller?
Oh, that, as the first part of it, for sure. You can't get justice without eliminating racism. But I'm saying a concise definition, and I'm saying two parts right now. Now, I don't know what the other people's definitions are. I have to admit ignorance on that. I've heard the word used. I don't know what Dr. Martin Luther King's actual definition is. I mean, where he said the definition of justice is, thus and so. I haven't heard that. I haven't heard Malcolm X's definition until now. But that is a partial definition for sure, getting rid of white supremacy, because white supremacy is all about non-justice. It's about mistreating people. And the codified definition that I put in the book was that you guarantee that no person is mistreated. You have to have that. Otherwise, you don't have justice. There's no such thing as having justice in one place and non-justice in another place. No, you can't have justice, non-justice anywhere. And I think Martin Luther King did say that. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Well, actually, you either have it or you don't. You either have it everywhere or you have it nowhere.
Doc,
because justice means balance between people. It means nobody's being mistreated.
Right.
If you've got one person being mistreated, you don't have justice.
Doc, you want to jump in here?
Yes, I have a final comment.
Go ahead.
I wrap up. So my final comment in closing is this, and I'll let you two get back to it, is that from what I have observed in my years of living, or what we call living, is that as long as we have in place the global system of racism, white supremacy, which is predicated or foundational on the premise
now, S. Dot, hold up for a minute. Hold up just for a minute. Why do you believe such a system exists when everybody keeps saying there's no such thing anymore? That you got Obama as president, this is the post-racial state, et cetera, et cetera. You know all the stuff that comes with it. You got Obama leading in the polls. Looks like he's going to win again. So how could there be racism when things are going so well in the opposite direction? I don't understand. Why do you still believe this, S. Dot?
Well, I still believe it because I recognize what I am a victim of on a day-to-day basis. I don't believe it. I am living proof of the evidence of it. On my job, in my at home, walking down the street, I live the evidence of racism, white supremacy. So what a pundit can say on air about this being a so-called post-racial society, that language sounds good over the airwaves, but the reality as a non-white person is that racism hasn't gone away. It's become much more refined, and if anything, it's become a lot more rabid and much more venomous towards those who are victims, because many victims are now running around saying, for instance, the oxymoronic term, black racism. You have individuals who are victims calling other black victims, you're a reverse racist. So when I hear that terminology, I say, absolutely, I am a reverse racist, because racism is the system of incorrectness, injustice. So as a victim, it should be my goal and objective to reverse injustice and incorrect behavior. So if you accuse me of being a reverse racism, I will say guilty as charged. But I hear a lot of victims use that terminology, reverse racism, or calling a person who is a victim a black racist, a Latino racist.
I'm not clear on why you would accept that definition as being a reverse racist. Help me. Can you go just a little bit deeper on that?
Well, I would accept it because I want the individual who I'm engaging in discussion with to recognize that we are in a system of racism, first and foremost. And many times individuals use that terminology, reverse racism, as a way of preventing a person from seeking justice or from looking for a correct solution.
Sort of like they do with the term race card.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that all the time. Yes.
And I tell individuals when they say, I can't, that I'm playing the race card, I can't play the race card when you have the race deck. I don't have any cards to play. You own the deck. So that's another oxymoronic term that I hear individuals. It's sort of like when a person says they're colorblind. When you say you're colorblind, that means that you don't acknowledge the fact that I am a person that would be classified as a person of color, which means that I am invisible to you. I don't exist.
Very interesting.
So, these are examples of how racism has become much more
So in spite
refined.
of all of the things that have been put before you, all of the things that are designed to make you think the opposite, what you are seeing is down on the ground. Essentially, nothing has really changed day in and day out.
Not only has it not changed, it has gotten worse. And it has gotten phenomenally worse. In fact, I can't envision it getting much worse than what it is right now.
When you say worse, I don't mean to extend the time, but you're saying some pretty heavy things. What does worse mean?
Well, what worse means is that now you have individuals who are victims of racism participating in what I would call, for lack of a better definition or term, I would call escapism, meaning that whenever there is any discussion of racism as being a system of mistreatment, these individuals revert to escapism, meaning they run in the other direction. They don't want to have any discussion of racism in any shape or form. when you bring up racism, they
They
revert
bail.
to escapism.
They bail on you. Interesting.
So I think that when you have a situation like that, that is the worst situation possible. For instance, I oftentimes say to victims, what do racists and rapists have in common? And they oftentimes look at me and go, well, what? And I said, neither of them wants to acknowledge the wrongfulness and the incorrectness of their behavior. Both of them tell you to get over it, and both of them are in denial. And both of them will say to you, you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you deserved what you got because you shouldn't have been wherever you were.
Interesting. Mr. Fuller, comments?
Well, I would speak on the term reverse racism, and in the word guide on page 340, it says, do not use these terms to apply to any condition that involves race, racism, or counter-racism. And then it requests that you, it says, because they are confusing. Reverse racism, reverse discrimination. The victims of racism cannot practice racism. It's like you being a prisoner, because when you say victim, that's really what you're talking about, a prisoner of war. So if the prisoner is trying to break out of the prison, the warden of the prison naturally is going to say, you are reversing what I'm trying to do to you. You are disturbing my prison. Well, of course I'm trying to disturb your prison, because I don't have any business in your prison. I've been incorrectly convicted, and your prison shouldn't be a prison for me in the first place, and you should not be a warden. So I'm not practicing reverse anything. I'm trying to eliminate what you are doing, because what you are doing shouldn't exist. The system of racism shouldn't exist. I'm not practicing racism when I'm trying to eliminate racism. I'm trying to eliminate a disease that shouldn't exist, has no reason for existence, that makes sense, that is constructive. So I'm not reversing anything. I'm eliminating. And I'm doing it justifiably because it shouldn't exist in the first place. And because I'm walking down the street and I say, well, because the Creator made me to look the way that I look, and then you attack me, and then I resist your attack, am I reversing anything except your attack? I am trying to eliminate your attacking me. And you're using a trick term called reverse racism. Or you're saying, I'm reversing your attack. Well, you can call it anything you want to. I'm trying to keep you from harming me, from committing assault. That's what I'm doing.
So logic is the key to everything. Logic is the key to how you deal with language, how you deal with words, how you deal with behaviors, etc. Because I hear in everything you do, Mr. Fuller, you're using logic. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Cause and effect. Cause and effect. When you press a rock, the rock presses back. That's a law of physics. The law has a duty to press back. I mean, if that is the duty of a rock. So what's the duty of a person who is under assault? The duty of that person, the duty of that bee, the duty of that bird is to repel the aggression. Racism is aggression. And anything that's done against racism is defense against aggression. It's defense. It's defense against something that shouldn't be. So when the racist complains, well, I'm trying to lynch you, Negro, and you're resisting me while I'm trying to lynch you.
How dare
What
you?
is wrong with you?
What's wrong with you?
Are you crazy? You're not cooperating at all. I don't understand your thinking, Negro. That's what they call reverse racism.
S. Dot. Let me
Yes,
hear it. You've heard what Mr. Fuller says. Your comments.
I would concur with what he's saying. I fundamentally agree with what he was saying in terms of elimination. My point that I was bringing up is that when I encounter other victims of racism, and they specifically put that charge to me that I am practicing reverse racism, I use that as a tactic or a tool to further the conversation about racism itself. I say to them, well, what is racism? And then they usually will say, well, it's wrongful behavior or treating someone bad or incorrect. And then however they define racism, I go, okay, well, racism is injustice and it's incorrect behavior.
S-Dot, will and I know you got to go, but I want to ask this one final piece. Will black people ever come out of this escapism that you talked about? And if so, under what conditions will it happen?
Well, I think that it's going to be pockets of resistance, meaning individuals who will begin to awaken and begin to constructively engage in the process of moving about dealing with this problem, the global problem of racism, white supremacy. But when I, as an individual, when I think about, are we on a mass scale going to one day just wake up? I don't foresee that in my lifetime. I remain hopeful, optimistic. However, racism, white supremacy, dealing with it on a 24-hour basis can make one very pessimistic, can make one feel like, it is such an overwhelming system to deal with. But I think that the work of Mr. Fuller, the work of Dr. Ani, Francis Quest Welsing, and various other individuals who have been committed to doing this work for decades, I think that as younger people get involved with this material and learning about what they have put forth as theories and concepts and begin to adapt those theories and concepts to the contemporary times that we're living in right now, I think we will make some headway.
Okay. I appreciate you, S-Dot. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Mr. Fuller, comments?
Well, I would just say that, the gentleman has said what he has to say because that's what I'm required to say when he expresses his opinion. And I would have no rebuttals to what he's saying.
Well, not a rebuttal.
Sure.
I guess
Right.
what I'm asking is this escapism, if what he's saying is correct, this escapism that black people are into when it comes to dealing and talking about or trying to counter racism, will black people ever come out of this form of thinking or this form of trying to run away from this? Will this ever happen? And if so, under what conditions will it happen? Mr. Fuller.
Well, if it happens at all, it'll be because an effort is being made to just tell people, first of all, the truth about what's going on. That's the first order of business. If you can discover what the truth is, that's why I like to think that I'm telling the truth when I say that white supremacy is the dominant force that causes all of these problems or make the problems that are already here much worse in all of the areas of activity. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. That just about covers everything that people do. So if you have one system that makes all of these problems worse than they are, then everybody should be on the page of addressing that system, and that should be a priority. That should be something that everybody wakes up, every individual person, every black person for sure, wakes up every morning saying, now, what can I do? What can I think about in economics, in education, in entertainment, in whatever I happen to be doing that would help to replace the system of white supremacy with a system of justice in order to make the type of world that I should be in. That's my assignment. I don't have any other assignment. Now, that's the kind of frame of mind that black people should be in, rather than just wake up every morning and yawn and stretch and say, well, let me see if I can find something to do, regardless of what it is, whether it's doing something constructive or non-constructive. I'm just a sort of an empty wagon walking around waiting on somebody to load up with whatever they have. They have a plan for me. I'm going to make a plan of my own, and everything about it is going to be constructive. And the first order of business is, what can I do? What can I say? And when I talk to people, the way that I talk to people, my comings and goings, what can I do that will best help to replace the system of racism with the system of justice? Now, if every non-white person on the planet right this minute would make that kind of commitment just by asking that question of themselves, what can I do in any area of activity? When I go on the job today, what can I do that would better help to replace the system of racism, which is the dominant evil system on the planet, with a system of justice? Because just replacing the system of racism without thinking about justice now is not going to work very well. The whole point for getting rid of racism is to replace it with something called justice, which presumably would be a better system. That's why I put on the back of the book, justice is better than racism. Racism can accomplish a lot of things. We've seen the evidence of that. I mean, being able to talk on a telephone, being able to communicate with people, in a very fast manner, being able to travel from one place to another. Under the system of racism, a lot of these things have happened. And a lot of races have invented things. White people who believe in racism have done a lot of things that material-wise have improved the comforts of the people on this planet. But even as they have done this, they have used a lot of these inventions, like gunpowder and a lot of other things that they have arranged that we're always here, and used it in such a manner, put it in a tube and call it a gun and all like that, and use these things in a manner that have been very, very non-constructive to the non-white people of this planet, and have completely discouraged the white people who are trying to produce justice themselves. They have become the weaker people among the white people of the planet. And the strongest white people are white people who appear to be, according to the evidence, people who believe in racism. And we have to change that. And we have to change it from the bottom up, meaning the non-white people have to codify what we do every day in every area of activity so that everything that we do is constructive. Every contact that we make. Just don't hang out with people just for the sake of hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't get on a plane and say you're traveling from one place to another just to be traveling.
Yeah, we see a lot of that.
You should be traveling with something in mind.
Some purpose,
I'm going to improve the world by taking this trip that I'm fixing to take. I'm going to try to learn something on this trip that's going to be of constructive value that I can use when I come back or even while I'm on the trip. Try to spread some learning or try to acquire some learning that I can use right when I'm on the trip, because I'm supposed to be in a constructive mode all the time, never non-constructive. That's the white supremacist thing. The white supremacists are always trying to figure out how to build something up in order to tear something else down for non-constructive reasons. They enjoy that. That's the kind of mentality they've spread all over the world. They love destroying people and things and then bragging about it and put it in their history books about how many people they slaughtered. This is why they love to write murder mysteries, glorifying murder rather than how to grow something. That's not the dominant influence of the white supremacists. Go in any bookstore. Most of the books, if you want to find a book about gardening or something like that, it's stacked over in the back somewhere. But a book about killing somebody is right in the window. The dagger in the back, the body in the trunk, the headless corpse, the body on the beach. Oh, that's great stuff. I got to figure out how to do some of that.
How I can expand that notion in the movies and the videos and on television, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. Fuller, thank you so much once again for being here for the compensatory concept heard with Mr. Neely Fuller exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
Thank you.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works,